Forget the fairy tales. This is a courtroom showdown where a prince's own words are being thrown back at him, line by line, memory by memory, under the cold fluorescent lights of legal reality. The image of royal polish, cracking. The image of a wounded truth teller, under fire. And right at the center of this storm is a ghost from the past, a woman who never asked to be dragged back into the headlines.
Harry loses the plot. The Duke of Sussex's first day in the witness stand in his needless and bitter war against the Daily Mail newspaper was a complete disaster. The guy is a hot mess, attacking the royal family, once again playing the victim card. Poor me, the world's least happy millionaire.
There was a reason Meghan Markle didn't want Prince Harry to go to war with the Daily Mail, and today we now understand why.
Harry is quite delusional. I believe that he behaves like an immature teenager that is still throwing one big epic tantrum.
Prince Harry is now so deeply unhappy in California, he's intent on quitting his life in the United States, with sources telling Radar he's now homesick. A lost Duke who feels stalled, isolated, and desperate to reclaim a sense of purpose away from Hollywood.
Devastating moment for Prince Harry's reputation and credibility, as he argues with a judge while in the dock, contradicts himself, appears to fib about using the pseudonym Mr. Mischief.
So when I was in court for Prince Harry's case on Monday, I thought that I saw the woman who I understand to be Prince Harry's alleged stalker, so-called stalker, lined up outside courtroom 76, trying to get access after lunch on day one when his team were laying out his case.
That Harry, as part of his session to the King in order to return, will not launch any new legal actions against the UK press.
Well, as we all know, Prince Harry is in the UK. He is testifying around this case that he has against the Associated News.
Getting into big trouble with the judge for yelling at the Daily Mail's main lawyer. Harry is out of control. He hates accountability, and his performance in the witness stand today was absolutely...
But Harry's in court because he's still suing the Daily Mail. He's still suing all of these papers. And what's interesting is these folks are so fame hungry, okay? And then when they get written about, they don't love the way they've been written about. It's like, okay, you guys can't make your mind up. You can't be happy. It's this catch-22. You want constant press, and you want to constantly...
Breaking. Prince Harry's ex-girlfriend Chelsea Davy just became the center of his £40 million lawsuit, and Meghan Markle is absolutely furious. Harry's legal team is abandoning ship. His own $20 million book is destroying him under oath. The judge publicly humiliated him in court. And here's the twist nobody saw coming. Chelsea's husband might sue Harry next. Plus, wait until you hear what the Queen warned him before she died. This courtroom disaster is about to get so much worse. That opening alone set the tone outside the courthouse, whispers racing through reporters, commentators circling like hawks, and one question hanging in the air: how did a privacy case turn into a public excavation of a prince's past relationships? Inside, the strategy from the defense was clear. If you say your privacy was violated, they're going to ask what you've shared yourself. And when a best-selling memoir exists, every page becomes fair game. Not gossip blog chatter, not anonymous leaks, printed words with a global audience. The courtroom didn't feel like a palace annex. It felt like a cross-examination chamber where reputation meets record. Then came the moment that shifted the mood from tense to electric.
Harry was sworn in before taking his seat in the witness box, and he was questioned under oath by David Sherborne, who is his barrister. He was then cross-examined by Anthony White KC, who is, of course, representing the Daily Mail newspaper. Anthony White KC knows his onions and has taken Harry down and taken him down.
London High Court Day 2 of Harry versus the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail's barrister stands up and drops a nuclear bomb. He starts reading testimony about Harry's relationship with Chelsea Davy. Intimate details, private conversations, their romantic trip to Botswana. plans they made as a couple where Harry preferred to spend the night. Harry's sitting there in court. His face goes pale because Chelsea Davy represents everything Meghan Markle isn't. Chelsea came from money, didn't need Harry's fame, avoided cameras, never leaked stories, lived with dignity, moved on successfully. She's now happily married with children in Africa, living the quiet life Harry claimed he wanted. Suddenly, this wasn't just about alleged press intrusion years ago. It became about contrast, past versus present, private versus public, the life that might have been versus the life that is. Commentators didn't need to say it out loud. The comparison was doing its own damage. Because here's the uncomfortable layer. When legal teams revisit old reporting, the people in those stories get pulled back in too. And while one side argues principle, the other side argues precedent, what was already in the public domain, what had been discussed before, what lines were blurred long ago.
Harry's relationship with Chelsea Davy, the true love of his life, front and center at the High Court on day 2 of this explosion between the delusional Duke and the Daily Mail newspaper. Lots of details about their romance being discussed as Harry's facial expressions were judged in intimate detail. Now, it was telling that when Harry arrived for day of this bomb case today, an interview asked him about free speech, and he conveniently chose to ignore it.
Meghan, she's been leaking to the press since day one. She commercialized every aspect of their relationship. Netflix documentaries, Oprah interviews, podcast deals. The contrast couldn't be more brutal. Here's what's devastating. Harry's arguing the Daily Mail invaded his privacy by reporting on his relationship with Chelsea, but he never asked Chelsea if she wanted her private life dragged through international courts 20 years later. Her husband reportedly told Harry to stop talking about her. Harry ignored him. Now Chelsea's name is plastered across every newspaper in the world again. That argument, whether fair or not, hit hard in the gallery because courtrooms don't deal in vibes, they deal in specifics, dates, quotes, publications. And when personal history becomes legal evidence, sentiment takes a back seat to documentation. Observers started murmuring about optics, not legal strategy, optics. One former partner living quietly, rarely speaking publicly. Another chapter of life documented in interviews, podcasts, streaming specials. And now a judge trying to keep testimony focused while lawyers read back passages that were never meant to be courtroom exhibits.
Imogen James from inside the High Court reported it contains specific and intimate details of his private life and relationship with Chelsea Davy, Sherborne said. One line says Harry was a regular fixture at Davy's house. The article also includes their plans as a couple and the Duke's preferences, likes to spend the night. Prince Harry says this is highly sensitive information in his witness statement. Sherborne says Prince Harry's evidence is amply firm that it couldn't have come from another person other than Davy or him, and neither of them shared this. This could not have conceivably have come from a legitimate source, Sherborne says.
The hypocrisy is staggering. He wrote in spare about William's private parts. He revealed private conversations with his dying grandmother. He exposed Kate's personal messages. But somehow, the Daily Mail reporting on his public relationship with Chelsea 2 decades ago is the crime of the century. Sources say Meghan is beside herself. While Harry's in London reminiscing about the true love of his life in sworn testimony, she's back in California watching this unfold. Every article about Chelsea mentions how grounded she was, how she didn't chase fame, how she maintained her dignity, everything Meghan isn't. And here's the detail that's enraging Meghan. The subtext was loud. When you open your own life to the world, where does your legal definition of privacy begin and end? That's not a tabloid question. That's a courtroom question. And the more the memoir was referenced, the more the case seemed to pivot from what the press did to what was already public. But nothing compared to the tension spike that came next. Not about romance, not about headlines, but about courtroom conduct itself.
This relationship now being in the spotlight highlights the huge difference between Harry's current wife, Meghan Markle, and the woman who he for a long time believed was the true love of his life, Chelsea Davy. Now, of course, we've got to be clear, she's moved on, she's incredibly happy, living a brilliant life with a new husband, children, and not at all pining for Harry. Indeed, Chelsea Davy will be absolutely furious that he is putting her under the international microscope once again. But just think about the contrast here, folks. Think about why Meghan Markle is so clearly unhappy about this. Because Meghan Markle could never be said to be someone who didn't leak intimate details. of her private life with Prince Harry to them, because she did, multiple times.
Harry insisted Chelsea attend his wedding. Meghan didn't want her there, but Harry demanded it. That tells you everything about who he's never gotten over. But Chelsea's just the beginning of Harry's nightmare, because what happened next in that courtroom was complete annihilation. Justice Matthew Nicholin stopped the proceedings, looked directly at Harry, and delivered a public rebuke that will haunt him forever. You are doing exactly what lots of litigants do, arguing back to the barrister about the evidence being put to you when your role is simply to answer the questions. Read that again. The judge told the prince he's behaving like every other entitled defendant who thinks they're smarter than the lawyers in front of reporters from around the world on the public record forever. Harry couldn't help himself. He kept trying to argue, explain, justify. The judge had to intervene multiple times, each interruption another humiliation, each rebuke proving Harry has no idea how courts actually work. And that was the visual no PR team can spin. A royal figure being reminded firmly that in court, titles don't matter. Procedure does. You answer. You don't debate the question. You don't give speeches. You don't rewrite context mid-testimony. From that point on, the energy shifted. This wasn't just a legal fight. It felt like a collision between two worlds, royal instinct versus judicial discipline. And hanging over everything was the book, the memoir that told his story on his terms, now being dissected under someone else's. The next phase would dig even deeper into that collision. Past warnings, printed words, and the brutal permanence of ink when it meets the law. The courtroom mood after the rebukes reportedly shifted from theatrical to surgical. Less drama, more dissection. Lawyers weren't chasing headlines, they were chasing consistency. What was said publicly? What was said privately? What was written? What was sworn? And then came the shadow that had been hovering over the whole case, the permanence of print. This is someone who spent hundreds of millions on legal fees across multiple cases, who has an entire team of expensive lawyers, and he still can't follow basic courtroom protocol. Or he literally cannot shut up and answer questions. Before she died, Queen Elizabeth warned him about exactly this. She pulled him aside, told him directly, "What's in print stays in print." She begged him, "Never put pen to paper, Harry." She knew her grandson's impulsiveness, his inability to think long-term, his need for revenge. She understood that once you publish something, it becomes permanent evidence forever against you in court. Harry ignored her completely, published Spare anyway, went on a global tour bragging about how accurate every word was, how he had fact checkers, how this was his definitive truth. Now that book is being read aloud in court, proving he lied under oath. Her exact words echoing through the proceedings, "What's in print stays in print." She saw this disaster coming, tried desperately to prevent it. He thought he knew better than a woman who navigated 70 years as queen. The prophecy is fulfilling itself in the most devastating way possible. Whether that private warning happened exactly that way is debated in media circles, but the core idea, undeniable. Published words don't fade. They don't get rephrased. They don't suddenly become off the record. In court, a memoir isn't a vibe. It's a document. Legal observers pointed out that this is the brutal paradox of telling your story on a global stage and then stepping into a legal arena about privacy. The very openness that built sympathy can be reframed as prior disclosure, not emotionally, legally. Then came another uncomfortable contrast circulating among commentators, how different members of the same family have handled media disputes. Some chose quiet settlements. Some pursued cases with minimal publicity. Others turned personal battles into public crusades. Different strategies, different outcomes. And now those differences were being talked about in the same breath. Money talk started creeping in too, not from inside the courtroom, but outside, where analysts love to speculate. Lawsuits at this scale are expensive, very expensive. And while exact figures are often exaggerated online, one thing is certain: long legal wars drain time, energy, and resources. Win or lose. At the same time, reputation in the entertainment and charity worlds is a delicate currency. Executives and partners tend to shy away from ongoing controversy, not because they pick sides, but because unpredictability makes planning difficult. Fair or not, that's how the industry works. And when a public figure is constantly in litigation, every future partnership gets viewed through a risk lens. But the most dangerous territory wasn't financial or reputational, it was credibility. Because when testimony, interviews, documentaries, and books all exist at once, small differences in phrasing can become big questions under cross-examination. Not necessarily lies, not necessarily scandals, but inconsistencies. And in court, even minor inconsistencies get magnified. Commentators started whispering about narrative versus nuance. In media appearances, people summarize feelings. In court, lawyers dissect timelines. What felt true emotionally can sound imprecise legally. That gap can be painful to watch play out in real time. And hovering over everything was the silent royal response. None. No public statements. No visible interventions. No dramatic shows of support or condemnation. Just distance. Palace insiders, according to royal correspondents, often describe this as letting the process run its course. To critics, it looks cold. To the institution, it's containment. Meanwhile, the personal side of the story, relationships, old memories, former partners, kept resurfacing in headlines. And every time that happened, the case drifted further from a clean legal argument and deeper into emotional territory the court doesn't actually rule on. That's the twist. Outside, it feels like a referendum on character. Inside, it's a narrow question about specific claims, dates, and conduct. The internet debates love, loyalty, betrayal. The judge looks at evidence. And the evidence doesn't care about fairy tales. Observers who once saw this lawsuit as a bold stand for principle are now split. Some still believe it's about accountability in the media. Others think it's become a cautionary tale about how personal storytelling can boomerang in legal settings. Both interpretations are circulating loudly. What's clear is this: the image of control has slipped. The narrative is no longer being delivered through interviews, voiceovers, or streaming edits. It's coming out through questioning, documents, and judicial reminders. Slower, harsher, less flattering. And that's the real drama, not tabloid drama, structural drama. The kind where a life built in public meets a system that doesn't run on emotion, sympathy, or branding, just proof. Whether the final ruling ends in victory, loss, or messy middle ground, one thing is already happening in real time. The myth of total narrative control is collapsing. Because once your story leaves your mouth and enters the record, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It doesn't belong to you anymore. It doesn't belong to you anymore. It doesn't belong.